And it blew my mind because I was like, the impact we're looking for and the thing we're looking to do measurement on, which is like click through, form fills and things like that, that's not where the person's actually getting value from.
All right, welcome back, guys. Today, we're joined with Phil from MyCarrier, and we're going to talk a little bit about some marketing topics. Well, who knows where this conversation will go, but Phil, thanks for hopping on today. I know we had a little bit of trouble last time. I appreciate you rescheduling and taking some time out of your day.
Yeah, totally. It was my fault. It's when they're upgrading your neighborhood to fiber, I guess the old stuff breaks. So
yeah. So do you have fiber now, or is that still down
I
there?
don't.
Okay.
I think it's like there's like a sign that says working from August 15th to like November 30th. So
Yeah, one day.
It's going to take some time.
One day.
Yeah.
Yeah, fiber's nice when you have it. When it's definitely a good thing. So anyway,
especially if you're working from home. But
yeah, we were at a place before we moved here, and it was the only time we've had fiber internet, and it was like, this is how that works. Just insane. like putting a gig or two of upload in just a few seconds, and it's just mind blowing. It's like 300 megabytes per second upload speed, which is just cable doesn't work
insane.
like that, and we move out here and we have cable internet, which you'd think would be steady, but it's not. It feels like we're out in the country, and it kind of like, it kind of fades and goes, and it's just
like the DSL days.
I know they meter it and they can mess with things. So, but anyway, it's not an IT conversation about internet, as fun as that is. So, I know the people that listen to this, they may not know who MyCarrier is. Maybe let's start there. The company you're with, MyCarrier, kind of explain a little bit about like what you guys do, who you guys are. Just kind of give us a quick snapshot.
Sure. So we are a software platform that small businesses use to schedule and quote their freight for less than truckload shipping. So anybody who's shipping anything big generally either goes less than truckload or LTL or a full truckload. And historically, to ship those types of things, you end up either having to email, call, or go to 5 different websites in order to get a quote for your one shipment. And what MyCarrier does is we consolidate all of those into a single platform so you can fill in your information for your load one time, click a button, and then it will pull all of the relationships you have with carriers into a single platform, tell you how much it will cost to get to where it's going to go, and then how long it will take. And then you can make a decision on what would be either best for your customer or best for your business as a whole. I think the closest consumer product that you could potentially relate it to is like Kayak. Before Kayak, airlines you'd have to go from airline to airline to get a quote or a price for a flight, and then you'd make a decision. When Kayak came along, it consolidated all of those options into a single place. You could run one, I'm going from Philadelphia to Dallas, and you'd get all the prices and be able to make a decision based on what you needed to be and when, where, and how. So that's MyCarrier in a box. So we cater to small businesses. We're moving a little bit up market now with a couple of different new product features, but that's who we are.
Cool. So, and what do you do there, Phil? What's your role at MyCarrier?
So I'm the director of marketing at MyCarrier. I basically head up all of the marketing department. I work under the CEO, and we work together to figure out exactly how we want to communicate to potential customers as well as current customers.
Okay.
So.
At what point, I think this, just to kind of help me frame my conversation with you, at what point in that journey did you join? Were you like really early in that go-to-market, or was MyCarrier fairly established when you kind of came on?
So MyCarrier's been around for a decent amount of time, but they were a white label. They mostly did white labels for carriers.
Okay.
So essentially the carriers, we run the carrier's platform for their quoting and shipping, and they've been around for quite some time now. But then 2 years ago, I came on as the demand gen marketer,
Okay.
and we just started really going to market as MyCarrier
Yeah.
around that same time frame.
Okay.
And so that was my role starting off. And then about a little under a year ago, I moved into the director role.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot here because this is like a long-standing question, and I enjoy hearing the answer. How do you define demand gen marketing?
How do I?
Simply.
How does anybody? How does anybody define demand gen marketer? I think it's like, unfortunately, it's kind of like at the whims of whoever the leadership is. Anyways, if you want me to define demand gen
Please.
marketer,
That's what I'm interested in. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a complicated question because demand gen, like the name demand gen, basically demand generation, should
Yeah.
really like tell you what it is. It's to create demand for whatever product or whatever service it is that you're trying to get to the market. A lot of times, demand is confused for like capture. A lot of people are talking about demand capture, demand generation, like creating demand, capturing demand.
Yeah.
A lot of times, demand gen is confused for demand capture. And if you really want to get into what demand generation is, it's like creating the demand. Like it's helping people want the product, need the product, and understand what the product can do for them. That is what I consider demand gen.
Yeah. You and I are on the same page. We can be friends.
Yeah,
And
we
I
can hang
think
out.
yeah, I think it's funny though, because when you see all the things that are getting lumped into that, it's fast becoming, they're like lead gen is just kind of getting lumped into part of demand gen and all this stuff. And so it's this very enigmatic role. And I think, inside of certain spaces, inside of the SaaS space, it's a conversation, and then you get outside of that and you start using this word, people haven't even heard it. And then the problem is it's not clearly defined. And, I prefer using demand creation, to kind of
Mm-hmm.
separate from, I don't think it's not like this industry sector, thing. So it's easier just to say demand creation is doing those things. Right. But, yeah, I find that interesting because it's such a, to define that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's a little bit of a side tangent. I don't think our audience could care less what we call any of it. I
I
think
mean,
we're,
Mike, it's good to have conversations, especially if you are able to reach the decision makers, the people who are actually like hiring for demand gen roles. Because if you have like the wrong concept or the wrong understanding, and you don't ask the right questions when you're hiring, like it's really hard to gauge whether or not that person's going to be actually successful in the role. If you consider demand gen like building ads and running search marketing to like pull in leads, then like somebody like myself or somebody like yourself might come in thinking something entirely different, and then you either have to have like a mind shift within the company, or you just have to move, like you have to move on.
yeah,
So
it
it's
is.
important to understand.
It is a challenge enough for leadership at companies to wrap their mind around implementing strategies that are demand creation, demand gen strategies as is when the definition is clear. It's
Mm-hmm.
already enough of a hurdle. It already is a departure from how they have been approaching marketing, digital marketing for, a decade or more than a decade or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
depending on, where they're at in the adoption of, I know a lot of B2B companies outside of SaaS still run a lot of, inside outside sales, but,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard enough when the definition is clear to like say, hey, okay, we're doing things a little different way, and we got to measure it a little bit different. We got to think about it a little bit different, and that's hard enough without there being so much confusion around what we're even talking about, right?
Totally.
So
Yeah, and
go ahead.
yeah, go for it.
I was going to move on,
Go
but go
for it.
ahead, finish your thought,
Yeah,
and then
go
we'll move
for
on. Okay.
it. I don't
So
know if I had a thought necessarily. I was going to just build on that, but
I think what's an interesting topic though for us to dive into that it's very relevant to our audience. Um, you know, being that I think a lot of the people that we work with, that we like to work with, they are also vendors in these more traditional spaces, right? I know a lot of your clients are, they're shipping goods to other businesses, other small businesses, in that kind of
mm-hmm.
space. How did you approach? So you come on board here, what was the approach to creating a go-to-market strategy going from we're a white label that
Mhm.
is providing technology for shipping companies to we're going to take this to the actual end user who's using the shipping companies? How did you guys go about crafting that, and what kind of conclusions did you draw? I think that could be really helpful.
So you basically, when you're a white label, you go from having a sales engine basically outside of your company. The white labels essentially will sell the product for you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's no secret. Like if you're a white label, you basically operate under the brand of another company, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a lot of stake in what you're doing. When you move to start going to directly to the end user, you have to figure out a lot of different things like who actually makes the decisions, who influences the decisions. And if you worked in like SMB marketing for any amount of time, it can be very complicated to
Yeah.
actually reach the person you need to reach. So basically, you got to start from essentially like 2 years ago, you start from scratch, trying to understand like how to talk to the end user, what actually is valuable to them. Is the quoting feature that they put all their information and pull a bunch of quotes, is that the thing that like gets them going? Is that the thing that wins them over? Or is it the simplicity of clicking a button to actually schedule the shipment? Or is it the visibility that you get from the calendar? Or is it a combination of all those things and you just need to talk to the right person? So ultimately, like we wanted to understand who the customer was that not just makes the decisions, but is going to actually be using the product and be able to go after both of those. We're
Yeah.
talking to managers, we're talking to finance people within organizations, we're talking to the actual end user who's loading up trucks. Like we're trying to reach every one of those inflection points within the business. Because if I mention a product to my leadership and I say, hey, this is a really cool thing, I feel like it would help me do my job better, then like they start looking into it.
Yeah.
And then like when finance understands like, oh, this could end up saving us, a couple $1,000s a month on whatever it is, then you get more momentum within an organization to make a decision. So what our strategy is to ultimately educate all of those key players, because everyone from the user to the CEO of the company is a key player within that, because it's not just a shipping product. It's not just a shipping tool. It's a business tool. And when you ship LTL is like it's a lever that you have when you're going through the sales process. It's a lever you have when you want to make your month at the end of the month. Like if you're in a business that ships LTL, like understanding what you're doing and how much you're shipping, when you're shipping it, and how much it's costing you ultimately is like that could change your business.
Walk me through the steps you take there. So I understand. So you guys need to understand, who in a company you're talking to, overcoming that
Mm-hmm.
challenge, which I think is an interesting topic in and of itself. But even before that, did you start by saying, we've got to determine what types of companies we're targeting, what that ideal company looks like? And,
Mm-hmm.
how did you kind of go about doing that? Like, just kind of walk me through that process. I think that could be really helpful for a company who's coming to realize like, hey, maybe we need to do a little bit of work, really
Mm-hmm.
dialing that in.
When you're looking at kind of your ideal customer, you basically want to understand like who's actually paying you money. The people who are willing to put money behind something is your actual ideal customer. Like you can get a ton of users, a ton of people like maybe using bits and pieces of your platform, especially if you have like a freemium model or like a free trial model.
Yeah.
A lot of people can get on there and start using the platform, but there's going to be businesses that actually get enough value out of it that they're going to spend the money. So what I did was you basically look at your entire database, look at who is actually paying you money and gets the most value out of it, who's using it the most, gets the most usage, and then really double down on those conversations that like sales are having, actually like talking to customers, going and talking to customers very specifically about what they're doing, how it impacted their business. We have a customer that's been on quite a few of our media pieces down in Florida. It's a pressure washing company,
Mm-hmm.
and like we were able to have some pretty deep conversations with Jared there, exactly what it meant to his business, and ultimately like discovering that your your customers are like manufacturers, they're distributors, they're the basically the foundation of the country. Like they're getting you engines when you need it. They are shipping you furniture when you need a new table. So it's like those are the types of customers that really get a lot of value out of my carriers. The people who are shipping, they don't have enough business to ship a whole entire truckload across the country,
Yeah.
but they do need to get something from Florida to Texas, and it's just a single pallet. So like that's your furniture manufacturers, that's your auto parts dealers. I mean, it's the entire country runs off of LTL. It's a huge market.
And I think that kind of presents a challenge. So when you guys approached that challenge, was it all right? We're gonna target this industry first, like this segment first,
Hmm.
and then once we get a certain amount of progress there, certain capture there, then we kind of move to the next, or was it a little bit wider? I mean, how do you go about eating that elephant?
We actually started eating the entire elephant all at once, essentially. Like
Yeah.
really, I think it's so when you're trying to niche down and you're in such a big market, let's be realistic, like we're not the only company that is doing this. Like there are companies reaching all of the markets, all like every single one of the same exact market we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that we differentiate ourselves within our ICP is by giving them easily to consume value, what they're actually doing. A lot of companies in our category, they talk a lot about logistics, but at a much higher level than like the small business cares about. So we didn't necessarily go after like a specific niche market. We're going after this much bigger piece of the pie, but doing it in a different way, in a way where people are willing to share that information with the people around them. It's valuable enough that they can pass it up the chain to their decision makers. It's not just like it's not a graphic that says, hey, save 5% on your shipping costs. Like that's not compelling.
Yeah.
So like the way that we differentiate ourselves and get into our market is by actually having like valuable information for all the parties within the business. And I know it's like it's nice to say like, yeah, we're super niche down and we've determined that these three sectors are the ones we're actually going to go after, and we're going to go
Yeah.
and create a bunch of content around this very specific thing. It's not complicated, but it's complicated at the same time. It's weird. It's hard to say that because we do need to reach a broader audience
Yeah.
to be able to get enough momentum within the LTL sector as a whole. Does that make sense? I know that
It does make
I,
sense.
I don't I don't want to like step around the question. Like ultimately, like we don't have like we're not going after furniture manufacturers only.
Yeah.
We're not going after engine manufacturers only or like machine parts or anything like that. We're going after the much broader market, but in a different way than everyone else.
So how do you connect that information? How are you targeting that wider group effectively
Mm-hmm.
then? What?
We're basically like having strategic conversations. We're doing a lot of like background work to get different people to have conversations with us that might be influential
Okay.
within those types of sector. We just went and saw Titan Casket and did a case study on them. They have a very similar philosophy and mission as we do in basically transforming a category that has not had technology or any disruptive things in a long time. They are bypassing and going around the way that people buy caskets traditionally, which is either through the undertakers or
Funeral
however
homes.
whatever you want to.
Yeah.
They basically are bypassing that, whereas before traditionally you had to go to those types of people. They would put a markup on it. they would, and then you'd order it through them only. Like there weren't options. Now, like you can go on Amazon and buy a casket from Titan Casket.
Direct to consumer caskets. Who
Yeah.
who knew?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's huge. Like they've been all over the place. But going and talking to companies like that are doing unique things. I mentioned Jared before at the pressure washing company. Like he was able to, and we've got the story on our social platforms. Like he was able to like bring a new piece of equipment to the market that he wouldn't have been able to bring to the market without having MyCarrier, because he was able to understand like exactly how much he was spending on shipping, exactly what that was going to cost him, and he was able to do something other people weren't able to do, which is ship for free, essentially,
Yeah.
because he was able to add that to his market, because he fully understood what was happening within his business. So like bringing unique stories like that and helping people understand like the true value. Like it's easy to say we're going to save you 10% on your stuff, on your shipping. It's
Yeah.
hard to say we're going to enable you to get a casket from LA to a house in Ohio,
Yeah.
and really and like do that all online.
So I've got two things I want to do. So one, I need to backtrack real quick, and then we can kind of continue down that path. You mentioned something earlier, and it's so valuable. I would hate for us to gloss over it. You talked about when you guys are coming to a company, targeting like the decision makers in the company and who you're going after, and you have the guy who's actually going on and like finding the shipper for the thing they need to do or for the orders or whatever. Then you have like the guy in finance. And you have leadership, and you have these different people. When you realize that inside of an ideal client, an ideal company that you guys are wanting to do business with, there may be three voices, 3 roles or 4 roles or whatever that is. How does that affect what you do? Are you creating in your strategy? Are you guys creating different content for the different audiences, or kind of just explain to me how do you go about reaching the different roles and their different concerns?
So, like each of those stakeholders that you talk to without, like throughout an organization, are going to care about different things. That's a pretty universal statement. Like the guy who's putting something on the dock, like he's not going to necessarily care about like how much, like the minute percentage potentially that in the grand scheme of things that finance is going to save. He's going to care way more about like, am I spending 20 minutes looking for a quote for this thing, or am I spending like 2 seconds? And that's like a big part of their day. So like ultimately delivering like the different values of the platform, because for finance, it's going to be, we're able to give you better visibility into how much you're spending and give you levers to pull to change that outcome. With the general manager, it's going to be like you're going to have better visibility overall into like how much volume you're shipping out, how much the difference between like what you have budgeted for shipping cost is to what you're actually spending. And then the guy on the dock is going to care how much time is it actually going to take me to do this thing? And like, is it going to save me the hassle of talking to 5 different people just for this one shipment? Really, it's about delivering those value statements in different delivery mechanisms. Like social, like LinkedIn, we're going to be mainly speaking to like those people within leadership that are going to be more than likely on LinkedIn, the general managers, the CEOs, the CFOs, the accountants, and things like that. So a lot of our content on LinkedIn is going to be targeted very specifically to them. And then a lot of the more fundamental shipping operations information and how you actually can save time and effort within warehouse and on the dock is going to be delivered in a more like personal way over email or in a conversation.
Yeah, different messages, different channels,
Mm-hmm.
different strategy there. And I think that business owners need to really hear this. This is not the execution that I think is really typical. Like when we look out across the customers that we work with, it's like we have like what we put on social, and it probably looks like what we send an email, or
Mm-hmm.
what's on whatever. Just pick the thing, and it's likely just some minorly tweaked version, formatted version to just go to the different places. But what you're saying is, we realize if we want to talk to leadership, we pick the channel, and then we tailor the message. and you're going through that process for each of the people, each of the stakeholders, in your words, that you want to communicate to, and thinking about how would I communicate, where would I communicate with that person. I find that, and maybe that's just a fundamental strategy thing, but I find it really enlightening and something that I, want to share out there because it's so valuable. And when we think about how do we distribute information, how are we actually creating demand, right?
Yep.
Is when and where those things happen. So I think that's really good. So you guys, you kind of determine what this is, and you're for lack of better words, you're kind of co-creating some content with these more influential, case studies companies, whether it's like the Manatees or the Titan Casket Company or whoever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've created that content, what's your strategy for distributing it to the people, the right eyeballs? Or, is it like, we kind of are just using these organic channels? Are we doing, what does that look like? Are you relying on some of their influence to
Mm-hmm.
distribute it to the relevant people? Like, kind of walk me through how you go about getting the right eyeballs on that content once it's made.
I'm going to say something crazy. We don't do paid search. We very much don't do. We do very few paid deliveries on like organic content, but we don't have a paid strategy. Our strategy is we want to learn and grow the types of content that we're producing that will be impactful to people on its own. And like you said, like we depend very much on those conversations that we have with people and their delivery mechanisms. So like
Yeah.
we're not using people. We're like we're I mean if you want to get down to it, like we're using people and their audience are like Titan has a pretty decently sized audience. Manatee and Jared, like he's doing a lot of stuff on social media. It's a symbiotic relationship where like we have something valuable, we believe it's valuable, we believe it is helpful to those people that we're having conversations with, and ultimately like they have enough confidence to come and talk to us and have conversations with us. We believe it's going to be valuable to their audience. I can't tell you how many opportunities that we've gotten from those conversations that we've had with Jared, like very specifically, like other pressure washing companies and distributors coming into the pipeline as a direct result of those conversations that we've had. Like it's easy to put together content and then have it distributed over paid. It's much more complicated and thoughtful to have content that is distributed in an organic way because it's valuable. Someday that might be a big part of what we're doing because we want to grow faster. But right now we're kind of like we've been doing it for 2 years, and in the grand scheme of things, like trying to understand what works and what doesn't work, like 2 years is ultimately like not a long time,
Yeah.
especially coming from like a very much like paid search oriented, very traditional B2B conversations on social to where we're making scripted videos that involve like dancing in a warehouse.
Yeah. And who would have
It's
thought
a
a
whole
company in your
different thing.
industry would be doing that, right? You know?
Yeah, and it's super cool to be able to like be a part of that and have like the support of the CEO and the leadership to be able to go and experiment like that in ways that like other people just aren't willing to do. Like they're gonna put a graphic together that says like, hey, download our white paper that they spent probably like 2 months like putting together. We're in the business to like move fast and impact as many people as we can in a real way. And you
So,
just can't do that if you're putting together like big, bulky things.
if you go back to who that ideal client is,
Mm.
and you thoughtfully consider who they are and what their concerns are, or do they have any interest in consuming that kind of content? I mean, if we realistically ask ourselves, do they want to consume a white paper? Is
Yeah,
that how they?
probably not.
Probably
They
not.
probably just they probably just want to actually like get a price. They probably just want to like see the platform. Like if you're hiding like what your platform does and what it looks like behind like a gated piece of content, like of course they're going to download it. Like they don't have a choice. Like they
Yeah.
want the information that's going to help them make a decision. If they don't find it on your website, like they have to download it. Like you're strongholding them into like downloading this piece of content that they're probably just going to sit on their computer.
And how much of that we have to be 100% like black or white, like gated content is good or bad, right?
Totally.
It's
Yep.
how much and when is it used?
Mhm.
But maybe the caveat to that is how hard are we making it for people to get information? And if we ask ourselves, which I think is a good place to start, when I do some kind of download to get something, how often do I really consume the content, or do I download it and then move on? And if they're
Mhm.
not consuming the information, are we really doing our job to educate them, to create the demand, to show them why we're different? I don't know. I guess that's just kind of, my perspective on it. I think of all the things in the years that I have given my email to download and then not consumed. All the
Mhm. Oh
PDFs,
yeah.
all the documents that I never consumed. And I just ended up on an email list, and it's like, oh, there's just another annoying email list that I need to unsubscribe to. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And to me, I think the goal is for people to get the information that we spent so much time and effort gathering, curating, producing in their hands. And if they don't consume it, did we really accomplish what we wanted? That's just my take on it. I don't think the email address is necessarily all that valuable if they didn't really ever grow their affinity, right? With
Yeah.
with, with
Totally.
your brand. So, and again, those are just my opinions. I want
Yeah.
to hear what you think in this conversation. But I mean, is that kind of like your line of thinking too, or am I kind of missing the boat there?
You see this example in like Google, one of the largest, probably like the place with the most data, the most information, the most, basically they're connected to the world. Like everything in the world passes through Google at some point. They are actually eliminating the need in a way for people to go from Google to some other platform where the content actually exists, because they know, like, if somebody's looking for like a recipe for like chicken salad, if they can show it to them and give them a recipe for chicken salad, like that's important to the user. If they're going for something else, something deeper, like they want to understand like what's actually valuable to the person. If I'm going to a platform to evaluate whether or not I want to use their like financial tools, like I want to see like the tool itself. I don't want a white paper that describes like that forces a description of what they believe to be valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately like what they're doing. It's like a company is saying like, we believe this piece of the features or this value statement is what our customers should value the most. And in reality, like they want to evaluate the value themselves. I'm a firm believer in like showing people what something does, how it works, exactly what the platform looks like, and then they can plug in their own value. Like if they can see themselves using that feature during their workday, then that's all the value you really need ultimately. Like I can make as many value statements as I want, like save time, save money, do this or do that. But
Yeah.
like ultimately, if like you can't really see it, or you can't like put yourself into the situation and really feel the value, like it's not going to be valuable anytime ever, no matter how many words you put on a piece of paper.
This is, I think, a good way to kind of tie this back around to what we talked about in the beginning. This is how, this whole idea of demand gen, this get the information out there, educate the buyer, help them, to create demand for what we do, for the solutions we provide, for, how our features are going to impact their daily lives, to put that out on the front end. The reason it's gotten clouded, this is my opinion, the reason this has gotten clouded with demand capture is we do all that and then we gate it. Because we value, it's easier for us to measure a win when we can say we captured an email to give them the content. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but by doing that, we've completely kind of circumvented the entire point of getting the information out to where the buyers can evaluate it for themselves by putting it behind a wall. Because we're like, it's so, if we get emails, that means we're doing something. I can measure how many emails we get, and that feels good because I can say, look, we did this content and it got 100 emails or whatever. We attach, those capture tactics to it because it makes it easier for us to justify why we did it and to begin with. Then it's out of sync with how people want to consume information, right? And it's like, your example with Google is really powerful. I think, again, you can ask your customers, but I think you already know when we're on any channel, whether it's a social channel or we're on Google or wherever it is, we tend to consume on channel. We don't want to go to another website. We don't want to click around. We want to consume right then and there. And if we make it hard for people, are they ever going to get the information? And I think that's that question that everybody has to ask themselves in that process.
Yeah, I did a research probably 7 or 8 months ago, something like that, where I wanted to like evaluate what social channels were actually doing as far as like what they were actually doing for us. Because as you know, like what you just stated is like people want to consume the content on platform. Like they don't want to leave. They don't want to click a link. They don't want to do the thing you're asking them to do. They want to consume the product, determine whether it's valuable and important to them, and then move on ultimately. Or if they find it intriguing, they're going to go deeper into that specific platform. But I wanted to do a study to see like what it was actually doing is like when we put effort, time, and at the time we were doing some paid, like supporting some of the organic with paid. I saw our direct and organic traffic, the line chart matched our spend on organic like perfectly. Nobody was clicking through, like people weren't clicking through on the paid posts, but like our organic traffic and our direct traffic matched that paid, like the amount we spent exactly.
Yeah.
Like exactly. And it blew my mind because I was like, the impact we're looking for and the thing we're looking to do measurement on, which is like click through, form fills and things like that, that's not where the person's actually getting value from. They're actually getting the value from like what you're saying, and they're consuming it. And then if it's compelling enough, they're going to go search for you on Google. Like that's just how, like, that's how I work.
Yeah.
Why, as a B2B person, why would I assume that just because they work for a business, their methodologies are going to be any different from the average consumer?
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that it's a profound observation, but it is so important if we want to be successful with any of these strategies, right? If we don't accept that to be true, that it's not going to happen right there on the click through a lot of times, then we're never going to be successful because we're going to look for the wrong thing as our measure of success. When you were able to draw that correlation between the direct organic traffic over here with your paid ads, and then we have to have that. It's an imaginary line, right? Like we can't, but and I think that like, man, as business owners, or as business people, shouldn't we be able to think critically like that? You know, it seems like crazy. It's like, no, if the computer didn't measure it, I can't trust it, right? Isn't that silly? Like, I think we should be able to think critically. I don't know. I'll end up.
I'm not gonna like. I'm not gonna like the whole attribution conversation is a huge conversation right now. But like, let's like be honest. Like 5 years ago, I believed exactly the same thing. Like, yeah, 100% attribution, woohoo! Like, like I can measure people in their entire journey. Like, and it was a lie then. Even like everyone bought into that. Like,
and that's right. Everyone did.
Everyone.
It's an important habit to break as we move forward, though. And
one of the reasons, like everyone did, like the marketing department was telling leadership, "Hey, guess what I can do? I can see exactly when they click and exactly what they did on the website, and I know exactly where they come from and why they're buying." And like marketers can move faster in that way. But ultimately, like leadership was convinced 5 years ago that that was how things worked. And now as marketers, like we have to overcome that. Like, oh, sorry, marketing was wrong 5, 10 years ago. Oh, we're going to have to move in a different direction. And guess what? It's a little bit more ambiguous. We're going to have to be a little bit more creative. We're going to have to think a little bit more outside the box. Not everything is black and white. Like there's a bit of a gray area, and we're going to have to go back to the age when marketing was measured on like brand impact and like brand growth.
Yeah.
And regional growth and things like that to make like real decisions. Like we can't go like they clicked on an ad, then they bought the thing, especially not in B2B.
This conversation is a lot more fun for marketers when we blame it on leadership, but I think what an observation. So let me recap that in just a few words. As marketers, we did this to ourselves.
100%.
We made this bed that we're being asked to lie down in, and now we're like, wait, we were wrong, and that's a hard conversation, but important. But really important, so I want to throw a thing out here, and I've kept you so much longer than I meant to today.
That's all right. That's good.
So I've heard a term. So you guys are talking about going to these companies and like kind of doing this co-content. Have you heard the term nearbound being thrown around at all?
I have not. No.
So I heard about it.
Please enlighten me.
Yeah, as I've heard about it recently, but I think it's a good way to define what you're doing because it's not really a partner relationship, right? It's not like where you're creating like this joint venture to take the product to market. You're not even necessarily co-marketing it, but it's kind of this idea where there is a symbiotic relationship and you do things like make the content because it has this symbiotic lift for everybody and you start to target people that way. And I am not like an expert on it at all. I've kind of been hearing it like a little bit fringe. Check out Logan Lyles, I think is his last name. He is with
Logan
Teamwork and he is talking a lot about this. So he runs a podcast and I'm going to plug his podcast because he's awesome, called Marketing Together. And he's kind of talking a lot about this like newer concept of nearby. I think it's a really anytime I am a believer. Anytime we can kind of define things and kind of make them simpler to understand, it's a good thing because as we have the conversations with more people, and building that strategy out. But I do believe in that, even though it's different than traditional, than traditional method to do things, and but it can be really powerful when you have those symbiotic relationships, even when they're not so black and white, right? Even when they're not so like, well, they're promoting my product because they get 3% or whatever, right? Even when it's something a little bit more like it's obscure, but we both know that it's valuable to kind of do these things together and have these conversations and put things out into the world.
Yeah, you see that in like my kids are on like a Mr. Beast kick.
Yeah.
Lately, they've been consuming a lot of his, and I'm there consuming it with him. Like this, the first thing that came to mind was that's one of his strategies. Like he goes on like, we're trying these 4 different yachts, and each one is a different this is like a $2 million yacht, and this is like a $100,000 yacht. Quarterback for the Patriots, Brady. When Tom Brady just appears on a boat from a helicopter, says hello, hangs out, and does a couple things, and then leaves on his channel, that's to me that's very there's no clear reason why outside of his brand he didn't go hey, what product are you pitching? How are you going to help me in this? It's purely it's like a you know what I'm saying?
It is. No,
there's no clear reason why. It's just there to build both affinity and pull in potentially other people that may or may not be interested in Mr. Beast. Oh, did you see Tom Brady was on Mr. Beast?
Exactly.
There's no apparent reason why.
Exactly.
But it's valuable.
And I think the value in recognizing that there's another lane here is so that we do know sometimes we don't put it. It's not affiliate. We're not doing affiliate marketing. We're not doing influencer marketing. It actually kind of exists in its own space where it's not just someone plugging a product or we're paying someone to use something and be seen. It's happening outside of that realm. Sometimes that's really good, right? Sometimes that it's a little bit more authentic, organic.
It's pure organic value. That's what it is.
And that
both parties gain from it.
It's so attractive. When things have that that purity, they're so attractive. Now, don't get me wrong. I am influenced all the time. I get the urge to buy what is it? Is it Athletic Greens or what's that one that's always advertised on every YouTuber's thing? And I do. I hear the commercials so often. I'm like, man, I'm gonna try that stuff. And I think that's the wrong brand. But anyway,
either way,
yeah, and I hear it over and over, and I'm
Athletic Greens is benefiting off of
and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I do need to buy that. I'm not saying influencer marketing, affiliate marketing, they all have their place, but that doesn't mean that there's not this other lane that we can live in and start to explore like, hey, how do we use that? And I think that's cool that you guys are just doing it naturally. And yeah, check that stuff out and maybe defining it. Maybe it'll give you some ideas. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
I always enjoy sharing things and looking for stuff. We're always, looking for like, okay, what's the kind of the next thing we can be learning from what other people are doing in their experiments. Right. So we don't get in the rut of like, this is how we like to do things, as well. But man, I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. I really hope it wasn't too nerdy for a business owner to hear. Too marketing nerdy. I hope that we tied that back together, because I know there's so much value for business owners just to make some of these like little shifts in how they think and how they operate, and to kind of hear, oh, we can go about this different, right? Like, and I love that you guys are not doing paid. Like, that's awesome. That's just freaking awesome, because that's not the norm, right?
It's like the thing to do, and like, yeah, the amount you don't have to either think about optimize, like the amount of time you spend optimizing like paid search channels is like, it's crazy. But yeah.
But you heard it here. It's not necessarily a requirement, and you have to evaluate every company. It's not I think that what I like about what you're sharing is it also, we should all hear that it's not a one size fits all. Like, the strategy you crafted was crafted based on who you were targeting and what your, how the market you were going after and how they buy. And if you don't, you got to start there. And then whatever pieces fit, maybe you do need paid search. There's nothing wrong with it. I have no problem with those bottom of the funnel type tactics. I mean, maybe that's a great way to get some quick wins, or maybe it's not. But what I think the lesson is, and again, I'm summing up what you're saying, hopefully I'm not doing it poorly, is we don't just throw all this stuff in the bucket, because you got to do paid search, and you got to do paid social, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, and all that goes in the bucket. And then if there's a little bit of room at the top with a little bit of leftover budget, we try something new, instead of saying, do those things really belong in my bucket for what I'm trying to do? And I think that if you've asked yourself that question, you might be surprised with the answer.
Totally. And I think Dave Gerhardt talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and like, those are all just tools in a tool set of marketers. And the problem with, I think, how we've niched down from a marketing perspective, there's a lot fewer like generalists, is like, you get like pet channels. And then that's like your go-to channel.
Yeah.
But like, if you just consider things like a tool in a tool set, like, you're not going to like use the wrong tool for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You have to use the right tool. Otherwise it doesn't work. So like, you pick a tool for the job, and then you go do it. Like, you can't have a pet tool. Like, I'm going to use this 18 millimeter.
For cutting boards. It's a really tough way to cut a board with the back of a hammer. And same thing. I'm not going to use a circular saw to drive a screw. And I know those are some really stupid analogies, but
yeah, I mean, but that's the way marketing is. It's like, I'm the saw guy. I'm the saw guy. Like, you got a job, I'm going to use a saw. Like, don't be the saw guy. Like, be the guy that has a toolbox.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying everyone has to be a generalist, but like, marketing leaders at the top level have to they can't have pet channels. Like, they can't. You just can't.
Somebody has to have an unbiased viewpoint when they create the strategy. Then it's like, okay, we need a saw guy. We got a lot of things to saw. We need a saw guy. Instead of letting the saw guy write the strategy, and he's like, we're going to cut stuff. We're going to cut a lot of stuff, I love that. I think that's a good note to end on, Phil. Thank you so much for joining me. I guess it's just mycarrier.com. Is that the best way to find more about
mycarrier.io.
So mycarrier.io. And wherever we post this, I'll make sure to throw that in the comments of the description.
Cool.
And thanks again, man. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Awesome. Thanks a lot.